Verbessere ich meine Kralle.
So, hello everyone. Can we ask to mute your microphones before we do that? And Remco, I just sent you the stream. And hello everyone who joining us on LinkedIn Live as well. And hello to everyone who is in the room already. So, Remco, thumbs up from your end? Wonderful, then let's kick it off. So, hello and welcome. Please take your seats in our lunch and lecture today. We are recording this session today and we will make it available on Powering Space in a few days for you. We are also streaming this lunch and lecture today on LinkedIn Live. Or if you would like to ask a question, please use the chat section on the lower end of Zoom, as you know. And then we might also invite you to ask your questions later on directly. So please be engaged to send us your questions because we do that for you. So last point before we start, and that's really out of our own experience, unfortunately, please keep your messages in the chat in a professional and a respectful tone. Otherwise, we have to take actions and we will show a zero tolerance politics here. There is no second chance. So we will kick you out before we even ask questions. So that just as a warning.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. So I hope you all saw the new milestone of humanity in space yesterday, where another European astronaut went to the ISS and actually doubling the number of ESA astronauts on board the ISS. I hope you all heard about it. We hope you all watched the live stream yesterday. If you did, please let us know in the chat because we will be talking to Philippe about this a little bit later. Give us your feedback.
Great. So every month we feature interesting speakers who talk about space outreach activities they have run and will go into details about why they worked, what went wrong, often very spectacular, and the lessons learned. So we Powering Space, so Judith Delaney, Remco as the co-host today, Charlie Bilsland, and myself, and I forgot Ryan. Yeah, Ryan. And I host a monthly Lunch and Learns, bring together the space communicators to discuss these experiences. So we can all learn from that as a community and how to even make that better promoting space. This month, we have this absolute honor to have an exclusive chat with ESA's Head of Communication Department, Philippe Willekens. And with that, a very warm welcome to Philip. And he oversees all communication and outreach activities at the European Space Agency, ESA. I'm Thorsten Greening, your co-host today, director at Powering Space, and most of you know me as the publisher of spacewatch.global.
And my name is Remco Timmermans. I'm the other co-host today. I'm the director. I'm one of the co-directors, as Thorsten said, of Powering Space, and I'm the owner of SpaceSide OU, a specialized online marketing and social media agency for space. And I also extend my my welcome to Philippe. It's a true honor to have you with us, especially since all these things happening in Florida just yesterday and even this morning when we watched the docking, or last night I should say. Philippe, You've been with ESA for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit as an introduction on how your career in ESA progressed and how you ended up as in your current job as head of communication?
Thank you, Remco. Thank you, Torsten, for your invitation. I'm delighted to be with you, and I couldn't miss this. I know these are colleagues who are doing communication, so I feel like in a family here, and I'm absolutely delighted to engage this talk. Initially, I had some charts to show you, but then I realized this is a lunch and cafe, and it needs to be interactive. So the technology has decided there's no slides and only people, which is much better. I would wish to have actually a real lunch with you guys and a real coffee.
We coming back on that.
Having said that, yes, when I started, the person who became a director general that you probably know, all of you, Jean-Jacques Dordain, asked me a question almost 35 years ago: how would you sell space station? We need to create a program which is called the International Space Station, and having an engineering background together with a marketing background, I was the first marketing person in ESA, and he asked me, give me the arguments. And that was my first and tough jobs, to try to sell that program with some friends and some enemies. Scientific community, I must say, was not very keen in seeing a space station at the time. There were lots of people very skeptical about what we can do on a space station. Be not entirely near 0G because of the size and because of the shaking and everything. So all the purists, I would say, in science, those who really wanted to have 0G, wanted robotic. So one of the arguments, of course, which was at the bottom of the list, which I put forward, was international cooperation. I said, look, just by going through the international program as an ISS, we're going to be working together. And the very last argument was a staging port. So saying, once we have our foot on a permanent basis in low Earth orbit, we will be able to go further after. Now, it looks like when I was trying to convince people in 1987 with that, I could almost use the same argument, but reversed the order of priority today. And coming back from Florida just a couple of hours ago, I must say, I was absolutely profoundly shocked by the fast development of what I considered the dream of my career. Starting with marketing on ISS, I created an office of commercialization in '92, trying to influence people in Europe to go for commercial application in space. So it was then drifted into what we call technology transfer, spin off from space, which then became business incubators, space solutions, space applications, and all these programs that you've heard about, which are still going on today, trying to promote small and medium enterprises, startup and new blood in space. And at the end, and I must say, I have a very good friend called Laurie Garver. Laurie was the deputy administrator of NASA. She happens to be born the same day as me. She's from the 22nd of May, 1961, and she's my twin sister. We met together and we chat a lot, but she won. She definitely won because she's the one who triggered the administration in NASA to go for a call and involve the private sector. And she enabled SpaceX and Blue Origin to exist within the frame of NASA, although I must say she encountered a lot of resistance. And this is, I would say, the motto of my career: don't give up, keep going, even if it takes 35 years.
That's an amazing story, Philippe. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as ESA's head of communication and ESA communication, maybe in general, you operate very much in the background. We see a lot from Joseph. We see a lot from a few particular people within the organization. But as a head of communication, you seem to operate very much in the background. Is this true? And is there a reason for that?
Yes, it's. I could very easily go on the forehand, but this is not my role. My role is really to support DG, my Director General, and I did it with the previous one in the same way as the main voice and the main face of ESA. I do it even more strongly with Joseph because I believe um, one of the objectives that I would like to reach is to make sure that behind the voice of our Director General, we have one voice within ESA. So I'm one of those, but I am aligned to the one of DG, and I want to show also an example to the more 280 spokesperson we have in the agency that we need to be unified behind that voice and that face. So it's deliberate, yes.
Okay. Wow, interesting. Before we go to the ESA communication strategy and try to understand it a bit more, so can you share an advice to our audience who are, most of us are in communication, in space communication, so for how to make our way or your way into the space communication? What we learned as Powering Space over the last years is that we offer this kind of tools that people, yeah, can find their way, can pick and choose and then move their own way, of course. And you just mentioned it, never give up on that. But is there anything else you want to share with our especially younger audience?
I think what is important is we have a privilege. Everyone who is actually addressing space has an enormous privilege to have a very captive subject. I mean, space is fascinating. I have not met anyone who told me, I don't care, I don't like. And even if I have someone a bit remote from space, I can connect. I can find a way to connect and engage. Now, my advice is perhaps uh, trying to address more and more in a very simple language, avoiding a terminology that is losing people in a cryptic mode or overwhelming people with technology or consideration that are they seem to be finding very very complex. As a little story, I can tell you that I have a life and a passion is to go to schools and share in schools, you know, my passion of space, and in particular the very young ones. And one of my favorite animation is to talk about cryogenic in space. You know, the temperature of our instruments, how we actually propulse or launch vehicles. And biggest challenge was to do that with 5 years old. And the subject of one of my talk was cryogenic, and the parents were completely crazy. They thought I was going to, you know, teach how you develop, you know, that very very complex name of cryogenic fuel. And basically I was organizing a dance between the little girls and the little boys, some representing oxygen, some representing hydrogen, and they were dancing around after being very cold outside. They came in, they danced, and they produced sweat and they produced water, and they all knew at the end of that 1 hour how to build the equation to make water and what was cryogenic, liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen. So something that is very complex, you can transfer this to you know, someone who's absolutely not aware. But if you don't figure that out before, if you think that everybody is as much advanced as you are, then you become cryptic and you lose your audience. And space is so fascinating. People want to know.
I love it. And I have a hard imagination or to see oxygen and hydrogen in a room at the same time. But I mean, it might be just me and the Big Bang. Um, let's talk about the ESA communication strategy because that's what we're all keen to know more. So, what is the ESA communication strategy, and what are the goals of ESA's communication?
Okay, first, before we define a strategy, we need to define the audience, and you need to have a choice. Because when I arrived 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, in 2017, um, I had the feeling that ESA was dispersed. ESA communication was dispersed into many different audiences, and you trying to optimize the resources in having single products for all the audiences, and that wasn't really fitting. So my first point in the strategy was to define who is my audience, and I clearly wanted to go to a non-converted audience, the people who do not know about space, those who would like to but they don't know. So this is the general public in general. And general public, within that, since the general public could be very broad, I had a focus on the younger one, 15, 25, even younger one. And in order to attract a bit more diversity in gender, I wanted to also have a specific targeting towards the young and female. So having defined the target, now we have our multiplier. Who can help us? So there are people, this is the internal audience, the internal workforce of ESA, the member states, everyone who is among our member states, and of course the media, being social or so-called traditional media. And those are the multipliers who help us to reach this audience. Now, in political years like this one, when we have a ministerial meeting, I have a specific focus also on top-level decision makers. And there's a connection with a head of state or a top-level minister, not the Minister of Science, but the Minister of Finance, for instance. There's a connection between the general public and that person. So I would say, and it's sometimes very hard to convince my colleagues that if you can convince a 5 years old, you can convince a minister. If you use the same language as you use for our delegations or people who are from our space industry, and you try to talk the same way to a minister, then you may lose it him very quickly. So having decided who we want to approach, who we want to convince, we've defined a 3-year strategy with a certain number of priorities in the tools and channels that we're going to use towards these various targets. So this is the overall approach.
No, fine. I mean, we will dig into that from our point of view. What I got is that you are addressing primarily the accelerator. So as you say, it's the media, the people that are taking the communication forward. But then it remains the question: how relevant is this strategy for the everyday people, for people that are using space, as we all know, day by day and are not aware of that?
Well, I'm, as I said, targeting primarily the general public. So we're designing, and I've created within my department a totally new area, which is called co-branding and partnerships. So we are dealing with organizations, companies, and organizations which are not in the space sector. In the toy industry, you've seen what we've done with Barbie, the Mattel, and Samantha Cristoforetti. We're dealing with the music sector, and you've seen what we've done with Coldplay. I had an image with Thomas talking to Coldplay. We are going to reach out to musicians. We invited Sally Ride in ESTEC recently. So we want to be more active in the sector of the artist, where this is the certain generation of people who are not space geeks, but they really love it. And as I say, some of them are actually singing songs about space. So we're going into the gaming industry, video games, and so on. that partnerships unit is very, very active. But of course, I had to overcome a certain number of hurdles, legal hurdles, proprietary licensing with the ESA branding, all these issues which NASA does not have. I had to circumvent. Now I have a clear field to do that, and I hope I can now really accelerate and talk to the general public where the general public is.
Great. With the language, I want to take a question from Jim here. Thanks for that one. How much effort does it take to communicate in all the ESA languages?
Well, it is tricky. It is tricky because, as you know, ESA has not the power of the translation and interpretation units that the European Union has. If you look at how many hundreds of people, I would say almost thousands of people working in translation for the European Union, we have a translation unit in ESA, but they're doing only the blue docs. So we decided to really be focused, but we wanted to go into a translation. And we've decided to have a certain number of things translated in 5 languages for the 5 main countries, and some other which are more general public in 17 different languages. But then we have a contract with a company, and we need to, of course, review that. And that is extremely time consuming because space has a certain language that needs to be really reviewed. The computer cannot translate that.
That's right.
Let me go into what you were saying before this, Philippe, if you don't mind, is about these collaborations with industry. If I go to my main street here, there's 2 shops. One is called H&M, where I can buy all these beautiful NASA t-shirts. The other one is called the Space Store, where I can buy t-shirts of loads of commercial companies, sort of as merchandise, but they happen to sell them there. The one thing I cannot buy are ESA t-shirts. It's the polo shirt that you're wearing, Mission Minerva. I'm very proud of that mission, but I cannot buy that. Can you explain us a little bit why I can buy all the NASA stuff, but not the ESA stuff in my local shop?
Okay, I gave you a let's say a partial answer at the beginning. It's also a question of licensing. NASA brand is open and free to use, and HMM has used it. They just got the agreement, and they didn't need to have a license, which is our case. We have a trademark logo, so we need to do that. On the other hand, we have started having a online shop. We've tried with one company to have one line of product. That line of product exists. The sales are really very progressing rapidly. There's a high demand. It's still a bit expensive because I don't have the retail power as HMM. But one thing I won is to remove from ESA the administration and the legal aspects of the licensing agreement. So we found a company that can help us doing this, and not the legal department of ESA that is generally busy in designing agreement between ESA, NASA, and our partners, rather than doing agreement between ESA and Playmobil, or ESA and Lego. So this is a new business which is actually taking off, and of course NASA has at least 4 or 5 years ahead of us. But in any case, fighting against NASA brand is an extremely big challenge for us, and we would like to I would say take that challenge into a different mode, a more European-based one. With some European values, and maybe a bit more selective. Maybe not going straight into all clothing material, but being more selective. And that's what we are assessing in the course of this year, probably beginning of next year. I hope we're going to start reaching much broader in the online, but also in shops.
Okay, very good. As a follow-up question, I mean, we talk about this difference between NASA and ESA. I still find it very difficult to often to talk to people about what ESA is exactly, and many people still describe ESA as the European NASA, which is true, but also not true in many aspects. But more in general, how can ESA itself, but also we as ESA ambassadors, help you um, um, make people more aware of the value of ESA and the benefits of what ESA is doing to the population here in Europe?
Well, first of all, you already do it, and you do it very well. I mean, not only you, I'm covered also Torsten, and this kind of activities is really giving tricks to everyone who is listening, and hopefully giving also ideas. I'm welcoming any suggestions from anyone who is listening, because it's not, in my own head that I have solutions for everything. But how can we do it? Yes, we are the NASA of Europe. This, of course, is in the general mind, because NASA is more than just a brand. NASA is like refrigerator. Refrigerator is an object. It's everything that represents geek science, and this is why you have NASA logo on the chest of many people that are actually loving science. They're hooked on that name because it represents more than that specific organization that is NASA. Now, how can we catch up? We've made a brand awareness last year, 2 years ago, and we came up to a unsolicited brand recognition, which was to almost 97% on NASA, 39% on SpaceX, and 21% for ESA. So you see the gap, but it was a couple of percent for national space agencies like NES and DLR. So in a way, we were well positioned, and this came right after this big effect of getting the 2 boosters from Falcon Heavy of SpaceX and the roster in, there's a car in space and so on. So these are big splash that are pushing the brain in gain recognition, acquisition of the branding. How can we do that? Well, I think this is the time for us. It's supporting us to have an ambitious program for Europe. It's supporting anyone through the general public, through your multipliers, that we need to have our decision makers at the end of this year to vote for programs and increase the budget into a magnitude, a step up for Europe. And in particular in those areas which are inspiring, like science and human space flights. This is why NASA is being mostly recognized. Nobody knows NASA for Earth observation. Nobody knows NASA for positioning or for the telecommunications. But ESA is a leader in Earth observation. ESA is a top shot with Galileo. So we can certainly raise Europe and ESA brand's profile in supporting a higher ambition for Europe. And this is the moment, this is the time. So we need all the forces to support us.
So talking about the target audience, I mean, you said in the beginning that as a sort of your prime target being the general public, but as communicators, we're always told that the general public does not exist. I mean, there's so many subcategories there. You mentioned younger female members of the audience as an important target group. But who are your key target personas?
Well, as I said, young female. If we're looking into a long term, we want to change the face of ESA. We want to have top management in a more balance, in a more gender balance. We went from 10% to now 30% in a couple of months. If we look at all the the top management. We recruited 3 directors, female directors recently, but we need in the top management of ESA more female. We need more female astronauts, and the trigger of that campaign to the younger and female was the astronaut selection campaign that we started last year. And we see the results. We see immediately that by promoting towards magazines or social network that are followed by younger and girls, we see that there is a high response. We've moved from 15% to 24% response rate to the 23,000 application that we got. Now the down selection is almost 40% female. So we see that by taking role model like Samantha or top management ladies that we have, we attract more younger careers from young females. Also going into our partnerships, we try to orient this into gaming industry or toys that are very close to the heart of some of the girls, and this is very proactive. It's not by chance that we're doing this.
Okay, thank you, Torsten.
Okay. Just on that note, we ladies in ESA, so we had the great pleasure to release in podcast, the Space Cafe podcast, a few days back on Tuesday, I think, with a really fantastic Geraldine Najar. And I really can recommend to listen to that. I mean, it comes with such a power and human factor in it. It was absolutely unbelievable. So yeah, chapeau also to the selection of your directors on that matter, Philippe. But let's talk about success. How does success look like for a communication strategy like you have it in ESA? So who is deciding it? Who is deciding what a success is? And what input does that do for a wider communication on what matters? I know it's a quite complex one, but let's start with what is success for ESA?
Okay, definitely brand awareness. If we better known, it is a success factor. If you see ESA positioning, for instance, James Webb Space Telescope was a major achievement. Of course, a technology achievement. Science will come up, will be a great achievement. But from my perspective, it was successful in terms of positioning ESA along with NASA in that partnership. So that was an all-in-all NASA, but we managed not only because we were launching, but we definitely positioned the ESA brand along with NASA. We're doing the same with the European Service Module on top of the SLS, which is going to bring the Orion into the moon orbit very soon. Those are elements where we can measure the success just by looking at it. Every single person that is coming to the KSC, the Kennedy Space Center, looking at absolutely phenomenal launch vehicle, they see that little ESA logo under the NASA one, and they know that Europe is present in that endeavor, which means a lot for us. So that is an achievement. Then, of course, we have, let's say, the more basic reference, which are KPIs, the key pointers that we have. We have our targets, and in particular, as the one I mentioned in terms of reaching out, the growth reach or the earned market that we have, the social media impact. We've got, for instance, and last year, a growth of 70% of our growth reach altogether. We've reached now almost 10 billion followers, 10 million followers. We've increased enormously those from our active astronauts recently with Thomas and Matthias. So we can measure that. Mm-hmm. On themes, we also have our KPI. So we know when we emphasize a theme on a specific event, we measure the impact. and that helps us also to decide which subject should be addressed when and where. So this is a guiding factor for the campaigns that we've started. Last year was Space Care. We had beginning of this year, it was a campaign more focused on ambition that was targeting, let's say, the summit that we organized in Paris in February. Now we are going to have another campaign that is geared towards the ministerial meeting. We are shaping that. It's going to come out, but we know from our KPIs how we can adjust that. So these are our let's say, our marking points, and of course we're taking that feedback very seriously.
Okay. We saw yesterday, and well, this week really, and I mentioned in the beginning, as a very big milestone for ESA. You talked about the role of Samantha and Matthias' mission. When I watched the launch yesterday morning, that was a big PR moment for ESA, but especially as part of the big NASA and SpaceX show. How did you see that performance on well, as part of the NASA and SpaceX PR machine, and the role that ESA played in that? We also saw Joseph being very present there, but still it was part of the bigger NASA and SpaceX show. How do you see that?
Well, on the James Webb, we had a joint show, and that was not an easy thing to get. It was initially planned to be a NASA show, and they agreed to bring us along with it, which means co-presentators, meaning also people like me branded all through the program. The SpaceX Dragon and the NASA program that you've seen yesterday is different. It's really under their leadership, and what we're trying is to make sure that the international partners, and ESA in this particular case, being present along the way as much as possible. So we've somewhat placed Dave Parker in the talks. We've got, of course, Joseph prominently closing the show. There's reference to Samantha all the time as an ESA astronaut with an ESA branding. So these are I would say, the small steps that we are working on to make sure that at least there's a constant reference to a European participation. But it is something that needs to be worked on all the time. 2 days ago, we had a meeting with the administrator, Nelson, and I brought the communication on the subject of that bilateral with my director general. And I said, this is important for Europe that we are present. And he told me, this is important for us that you are present. So I said, well, then give us more limelight, give us more opportunities. And that's what we are going to build for the series of crew, which I hope will be a long series, very soon coming up with Andy Morganson, and then other astronauts after the recruitment we have, but also the series of the ESM, the European Service Modules, through the Orion program and the Gateway. So I'm looking at this as recurrent opportunities for Europe to be present and visible. And believe me, I'm working in a way so that we are getting an increased visibility, and we will have that increased visibility.
Excellent. At the same time, we see space. I mean, human spaceflight is very sexy and very good for PR, but obviously it's not where the biggest benefit to Europe is. The biggest benefit, as we see, as a rapidly evolving space sector, is really around the commercialization, using space for Earth observation and for other maybe less sexy things, but that's where the real money is. To what extent does ESA communication have the agility it needs to be able to respond to this rapid evolution, these rapid changes in new messaging and maybe using new mediums?
Well, first, I think in your question, you're also referring to other subjects like climate change and security. So we do have the agility to change focus and put the focus where the expectation is. So indeed, I would say the human spaceflight or the science is our backbone for inspiration. But we addressing the critical issues, and this is of course one of the biggest difference we have with NASA in recent year, is that we've been constant in promoting the services from Copernicus, the services from Galileo, as an integrated solution for crisis, not only climate but also the consequence of the climate. So I think we've been very vocal on that, and part of the ESA branding comes also through the benefits to society and the service that we offer through our satellite. But here we have an additional, constraint which we need to share with the European Union. So I would say that in the recent months, the word Europe has got more traction than the word ESA, which is good. I mean, I'm a profound European fan, and I like the promotion of Europe. But by then, I have a trade-off between promoting Europe and promoting ESA. So through what we've seen today with the war, what's going on, what we need, it seems a lot futile to talk about having fun in space, and we are very conscious about that. So part and a significant part of our communication goes into that with the tools that are needed. We have extremely good writers in the science area on Earth observation. We have excellent editors there that are producing very good articles with our scientists, and we intend to continue. Now, how we can bring that to a broader audience, to a more general public, it is by, as you say, using new channels. I don't think that today we should disperse too much. We're trying out TikTok with Samantha, but I don't think we're going to go TikTok with the Earth observation, the climate change. But we're considering LinkedIn, and we're not too active to broad that, but that leads immediately to a question of resources and how you optimize your resources. Imagine, for a very small fraction of the NASA budget on communication, we do 360 activities on space. Of course, NASA is doing aeronautics and so on, but we're covering all the domains. My communication department talks about everything on space.
We hear you, Philippe, and you are talking here to a bunch of, or group, not a bunch of, a group of professional space communicators that are here also to help and to share a vision and a big dream. And you mentioned earlier you are very open for external input. So how can external communicators, as we are not employed by ESA or employed by the companies that work for ESA, work with you? And how much also is a non-invented here methodology applies when working with you? So how open are you for external input?
Well, first of all, I'm not in the mentality of the non-invented here. Absolutely not. I can tell you this is on the contrary. I like to hear what other people are suggesting. We are going to consult media, in particular, traditional media. There's been some let's say interaction recently where there's a call for more transparency from the agency. I'm doing my best to open up the books, having technical briefing with the media. So we're hearing this, and when we can, we have to sit together and work that out. On what you're suggesting, and influencers like you are, first of all, you can reach out to any one of my teams, of myself. My emails is fully open to any of you. We can have this kind of conversation, and I'm happy to listen to what the your audience is suggesting. We also have recently created a new office, actually, which is a branch of the internal communication. So you're going to smile, but I consider the internal communication not necessarily limited to ESA workforce. So I consider the internal communication being much broader to the family. And I'm at my head of internal communication to have a person that is going to look into all the people who are part of the community so that we can join forces, help each others, use our channels, our relations, our networks, but this in a more structured way. I tried with an initiative 2 years ago, which was called Space Talks. I tried to have a one voice, trying to have an open door to anyone who would like to talk to us about space and do that with us. But this was just a prototype. Now we've really reflect on how we can improve this, and having people like you on board, just like one team, would be absolutely super performant. So this is exactly the trend, Torsten.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, you might heard about our space cafes, or I mean, a number of your directors has been there already, and I think we showed that it can be established from the ground up, from a no name, yeah, and to run it to some success. Before we hit the top of the hour, I would like to go with you into a very, you mentioned it earlier, quite difficult area, I think, and it's Europe. We all love Europe, but the coordination with Europe, the European Union, the EU organizations, name them, EUSST, USPA. I mean, I spoke with Rodrigo on Tuesday in the Space Cafe, EDA, the Defense Agency, EEIS, the Action Service, and so on and so forth. They're all using space. So how do you coordinate communication with them? I mean, that must be, I wouldn't call it a nightmare, but a challenge at least.
It is, you're right. I mean, let's face it, it's complex. And you know, the reason it's complex is because it's always shifting towards governance. If we focus on subject rather than governance, it would be much simpler, because we want to achieve the same. We want to have non-converted people to be converted to space. And the moment we try to address the how and who is in charge before what we want to do and to whom we want to talk, we spend months and months. We try to edit the text of the other ones, and we're circling around, because it's more a muscle game or a branding fight than actually trying to deliver the message. I've had that story when I was in the Ariane program between Arianespace, CNES, and ESA, and we were spending, I would say, 80–90% of our time to try to put our logos in the right way, rather than trying to explain what Ariane is doing and serving. And that is a disease that we need to fight. I see that coming again now with USPA and all the other ones. We don't have that problem with EUMETSAT, or we don't have this problem with Arianespace anymore, because we know that we need to persuade the same people. We need to bring our assets together. It's like you and I, we can't compete. I mean, it's not who is the owner of Space Cafe or Space Talk. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we address the public. We address the subjects rather than who is in charge. And that is something I've seen along my career, and I'm trying to fight against that. I was told at some point, oh, you can't talk about floods. You cannot talk about fires. You cannot talk about fire brigades, and civil protection. You can't talk about security. You talk only about satellites. So no, we talk about the whole thing. You talk about satellite. I talk about services. Everybody talks about why these satellites are useful and save lives every day. So that's where we have still a lot of work. Fortunately, Torsten, is that there are new generation people who do not care as much as the other generation was, and they think more instantaneous communication, and therefore we can't trace anymore. We can't control and impose a governance. So we need to elaborate principles, and then the information flows. You can't control everything that is going on, and this will make it a bit more efficient. It might be a bit more risky, but it will be certainly more efficient.
Thanks for this open answer.
Thank you. And it remains confusing to explain to people when you talk about, and I'm sure you have the same experience as to who does what in Europe. But I guess to your answer, it doesn't matter that much because we are getting a lot done. We did put together the biggest Earth observation system in the world. Anyway, you've been in this job for 5 years, Philippe, and you've been with ESA for practically your entire career. What's been your biggest challenge at ESA in that time?
In the 5 years of communication, the biggest challenge is to try to keep a clear target, because anytime I go out in the corridor, there's someone who's asking me something, and that puts a lot of stress on the team. There's requests coming all the time. Our astronauts are champions. We have, I think, counted 20,000 requests for Thomas when he was in orbit. So it is challenging to sheerly handle all the requests, all the wishes from all these directors that I have, and therefore also be able to answer the expectation, meet the expectation of our external partners. So it's an immense job with a very, I don't say I have a small team. I have a very well-structured team, but there's a lot of stress over there. So my priority has been managing this. The challenge is managing people, but that's in any sector. But this is in a very stressful moment, a moment of communication where, on one hand, we've really burst the figures and the KPIs on the social, the digital, but where we've completely lost over the past 2 years the physical contact with the people. This is like, cutting the legs of someone like a professional runner. You need that contact. You need to see people. You need, as an outreach person, to have events, and that has been an handicap over the past 2 years. But very, very few challenge besides that. Only great time and enjoying every day of it.
Very good. One question that we got from the audience that made me think, and that's a question that we get a lot, actually something that I deal with a lot in my daily practice, is for the younger generation who would like to join this space communication community and do space communication as a profession. What advice do you have for people who are looking into space communications and outreach as a career with ESA or with other organizations?
Our communication is still based on a very high-tech stuff. So my first advice is to be able to go a little deep in the subject. So it's good to have a sort of thirst, on the subject and the technical matters. You don't need to be a rocket engineer, but you need to be interested in knowing a little bit how that functions. And therefore, if you have also the skill to transfer that into something that is reachable, that is sensitive, simple, accessible to anyone, then you have the skill set to become a good communicator in space. Now, how you find a job, I think there's job opportunities all the time. We are recruiting all the time. There's quite of a rotation even in my team, in particular in the editors or the social media team. So there are opportunities, and we will announce a couple of opportunities in social media in the short term for astronauts. So exciting jobs. So yeah, advice for that, I would say, share the passion to start with, get a bit of it insight on the technology and understanding, and then go for it. Yeah.
I really like the tweet that Joseph sent out yesterday of a picture of him and David looking at the VAB and at the launch site, saying that there's really two space geeks that are they're doing their job, but in their heart they are space geeks doing the stuff that they love, and I think that helps a lot. Do you have to be a space geek to work in communication at ESA or in space?
I mean, if you look at the long hours, yes, I would say yes. At least I speak for myself, and most of my colleagues I see they're so savvy. That I mean, Daniel is online. I've seen Daniel is spending hours and hours and even more. So even weekends, when you talk asteroid or space ops to him, he can go along overnight. But yes, we are crazy people about space. Yes, I would say. Daniel, I hope you support that.
There's not a question, but a remark from Jim. A crazy idea, as he called it, about the upcoming IAC. Why not talking with David Guetta or others to get the communication sorted out? But I'm quite
Yes,
sure
and
that's not
this is
something new for you guys.
no, this is serious. I think indeed, and by the way, we are talking to David Guetta. It's just happening to be the right example. We are considering, we've been talking to other DJs. We are considering, as I said at the beginning. Partnerships with some of the people who represent a voice to the general public. We need to find the general public where they are, being fan of automobile races, being fan of horses, being fan of music, pop music, techno music, whatever. Sports, we need to find them and find the right multiply and relay. So we will definitely go and have deals with some of these, I would say, famous people. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, just on that note, but Rammstein is very popular in Paris as well, as I heard. That I just said it as a Berliner. So good. So what is the way forward we can expect this year from ESA? You mentioned the ministerial. I think that's overarching everything else. So, I mean, and that goes back into the money, obviously. But on the communication side, what can we expect?
As a matter of fact, I think there's more than the ministerial. As you've seen, we've put forward the agenda 2025 of our Director General on 1st of March, his first day in office, by the way. So that was already on our website landing page with the new brochures and everything sent to all ministers and everything. So what we're doing is, rather than what we've done in 2019 with Space 19 Plus, the campaign was really focused on the ministerial, on that event. The campaign that we're preparing is going much further. It's going really to 2025. And that is something where communication becomes a strategic tool towards the ambition of the organization. Here, the ambition of Europe, but the ambition of ESA. So what you can expect from me is to put all machinery of ESA behind that ambition, to give a maximum chances for success. You will see that we will emphasize the benefits to society, the economic benefits of all these decisions that need to be taken on in 2022, but also the one which we are proposing in the long term, more on a political scheme, You are probably aware that we will organize another summit in 2023 with also heads of states involvement, like we did in February with President Macron. This was, as you said, a bit my job in the background to make sure that we have a sort of echo in the mind and in the speeches of these high-ranking people, and we are going to continue this at the highest level, so that at some point Europe will give the means of its ambition, and we will step up and be from, let's say, a junior partner to NASA, to a senior partner, to a critical partner, to a prime partner, and maybe a side-by-side partner.
That sounds good, and I just want to give you one feedback, that my Spacewatch team and myself, what we really enjoy are the recent briefings you have organized. I mean, for the media, unfortunately, so just for selected amount of people, but they're very precise and they have been very in depth, and we really enjoyed it. And thank you very much for doing that and organizing it. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for your time and your really open and honest answers. And yeah, we are looking forward for hearing more great stories from ESA and from you and your team. And back to Remco.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Torsten. Thank you very much, Philippe, for your openness and your willingness to share some of your thoughts on our profession, which I think it really is. So thank you for that. Thank you to our audience. We had a very captive audience. We had a very lively chat with lots of ideas. So I hope people have seen that. Rest me only to alert you for the next event, which is going to happen on the 26th of May, the same time with Judith Delaney, where we talk about getting kids excited about space. So keep an eye out on our social media networks to find the details how you can register. And with that, I would like to thank you very much and see you next month.
Thank you, Torsten. Thank you, Remco, for your invitation. I really enjoyed it. And please, everyone, reach us through email, WhatsApp. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philippe.
Take good care, and thank you very much, the audience. Great to have you in the room. And just a last selfish announcement. Don't forget, today, 4 p.m. European time, we have the Space Cafe Scotland, the next one coming up, with Frank Strang from the Saxofort Spaceport talking about the challenges of setting up a spaceport. I think that's interesting to hear later on. See you later. Cheers and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.